You are listening to Did You Hear?
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 The Johnson County Library Podcast.
We are coming to you
From the Central Resource Library
In Overland Park, Kansas.
This is your Library Insider.
In this episode of Did You Hear, Interlibrary Loan librarian Kari Sime and her staff join host Dave Carson to demystify Interlibrary Loan, aka ILL. How does it all work? Can you borrow from all over the world? What are some of the more surprising items people have borrowed? It's all interesting stuff as we go inside ILL.
Welcome back to another edition of Did You Hear? And today we're going to talk about a very misunderstood topic, but one that's super exciting and full of mystery. I hope I didn't oversell that, but we're talking about interlibrary loan. For those of us that are library power users, we call that ILL. And so I have three people from the ILL department here to talk about this fascinating subject today. And we have the head of ILL, Kari Sime. Welcome, Kari.
Thank you.
And we have two of your staff. Please introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Abby Menard, and I am an ILO clerk.
I'm Sarah Andrews, and I'm an Interlibrary Loan clerk.
Well, welcome to you all. So, if users of the Johnson County Library System come to our webpage, jocolibrary.org, you can go to Using the Library, and on that drop-down menu of Using the Library, you'll find Interlibrary Loan. So if you click that, you'll come to a page with a big heading that says Interlibrary Loan, and it says, looking for something we don't have, we'll be happy to try to borrow it for you from another library through our Interlibrary Loan service. I think there's a lot of misconceptions, and it's kind of funny because I think some people think that Interlibrary Loan is just between the libraries here in our system. But oh, no. You can get stuff from, is it overstating it to say all over the world?
Overseas.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how many countries, how many libraries participate in, sharing their collection?
Well, the people that are the libraries that are sharing through OCLC are over 72,000 different libraries.
72,000?
And this doesn't count the smaller libraries in just about every state that may not be trading through OCLC.
Wow.
So there are lots of options out there.
Now, each of these libraries, they don't share their entire collection, do they?
No, we can all share what we choose. And so our library, for instance, isn't able to lend microfilm.
Okay.
But we borrow lots and lots of formats, including microfilm. We can borrow microfilm.
Yeah, I've encountered some libraries that have really great vinyl collections, for example, and sometimes they don't want those to travel.
Yeah, there's a lot out there that don't, but there are some libraries out there that will, and we have some pretty regular patrons that request vinyl and things, and so it's really nice to be able to get those in.
How hard is it to find that item that I can't find in the Johnson County Library catalog, but might be out there somewhere else?
It's not too hard, especially if there's a lot of libraries out there, and we work behind the scenes to try and find that for you.
Well, let's talk about the behind-the-scenes part. So I mentioned you go to our website, and going back to that page, there's a set of instructions that says you have two options. One is recommended. Search the world's libraries through WorldCat First Search. And if you go there, it's a basic search like anything else, but also can be really robust. You can choose all kinds of different formats, and you have a lot of different options of narrowing down the results. So let's say I find what I want and I submit it, then magic happens, right? So it happens to a patron, it's magic because it then goes to you, and what do you do?
So it comes into us, and we can either have it go directly as a request and it just goes through and we don't see it. A lot of them do become unfilled for various reasons, and we have to manually go in and put those in ourselves. So we get all those requests, and then they come in from the libraries. We process them, send them out to our patrons. So it's a lot. It's a whole process.
Wow. So is it difficult to get libraries to agree to loan?
No, not usually. If they have any questions, they do a conditional where they would be like, we want it to be in library use, or we have set
rules, like they may charge a fee or something like that.
So they'll let us know if there's something.
And whenever there's a restriction, like either of those, we always check with the patron first to see if in library use only, for instance, which would be an item that's kept at Central for the patron to view. We don't want to borrow an item and have it at Central if the patron lives in Spring Hill and only wants to check it out.
Right.
Or if there's a cost, any cost involved, we check with the patron to see what the maximum they're able or willing to pay before we make the agreement to borrow an item. So we're never going to surprise you with a bill you didn't expect.
And so those would be coming from, that fee might come from another library, but we never charge to have it transported here.
Exactly. We don't charge. We pay any mailing fees and any transportation fees, and patrons only pay and it's fairly rare, it's very rare, if we can only find a lender that will charge a fee. And some patrons, in those cases, prefer just to go on Amazon and buy the item.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes the items are so rare that they're willing to pay the fee because there's no other way they're going to get it.
That makes sense. Yeah. Well, let's continue to demystify the process of interlibrary loan. So one of the things that I think is kind of interesting is that you've got all these different libraries. All of them probably have different rules for lending, different types of collections, obviously, because they have some things that we don't. We have some things that they don't. Is it all pretty reciprocal, kind of equal, the amount of sharing that goes on between libraries? Do some libraries lend more than others? Also, the lending periods, are some of those longer or shorter than others? That's a lot of questions.
Yeah. Okay, what was the beginning of the question?
Well, so there are a lot of different libraries, and so they have different rules.
Yeah, so within WorldShare, which is the program we use with OCLC for lending, their libraries can set up profiles and constant data, which is it'll show like what they're willing to lend, what they're not willing to lend, any fees they charge, any reciprocal agreements. One of the biggest reciprocal agreements that we do have with nationwide is called Elvis. It's libraries very interested in sharing.
Oh.
So any library that participates in that is going to be free.
There's so many bad acronyms out there.
I know.
So that's a good one. That's a good one. I like that.
Yeah. So every library kind of sets their rules as far as what they're willing to lend and things like that.
So does it ever seem like it's unbalanced? Are there some libraries that just have just a really great collection that seems to go float out in the world more than others, and then some like nobody's ever borrowing from us,
Some academic libraries are pretty restricted. And one interesting case that we've run across is a national library in Denmark that requests to borrow from us very frequently. Their restriction is for us to borrow from, or for anyone to borrow from them, they charge a fee. We lend for free, and so there isn't an exact balance there.
Yeah. Wow. It's just fascinating. In just a second, we're going to get into all of the unique things that you might have processed over the years. I need to share my personal story because Kari actually helped me one time. When I was in graduate school, I wrote a master's thesis. And so when you write a master's thesis, it's a book, you know? It's like a 162-page book, and they bind it, and they make a copy, and they stick it on the shelf of a library. Mine's at the library at K-State University, and they also have you buy as many copies for yourself as you want. I was poor. Oh my gosh. I was eating macaroni and cheese and frozen Tonys and ramen noodle, and I couldn't afford to buy a copy of my master's thesis. And so I was like, when I was in this job a few years ago, I was like, well, I wonder if I'd be able to get that through Interlibrary Loan. And immediately through the interface, it's like, no, that's not something that's you're able to get. But I talked to Kari, and she actually was able to work with the K-State Library, and I got to see my own book.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was super cool. Yeah. So what other kind of just strange things have you encountered?
Well, this is my favorite part about ILL is the interesting things that I've heard that we've gotten in, and also the requests. Some of them we haven't been able to get in, but I still think they're very interesting. I know in the past we got a model of an ear. That was very cool. We have gotten a request for a bag of twigs and a magnifying glass. Yeah. That was very interesting. We weren't able to get that one in. I was really upset. We got a request for a taxidermied bird in a glass cloche. And we were unable to get that one in. It actually belonged to a president, and I hate to say I forget which president it is, but it was in a presidential collection.
Oh, wow.
So they weren't going to lend that out.
Do presidential libraries allow access to their collections at times?
The John F. Kennedy Presidential Library was at one time one of our best suppliers for microfilm for years and years. They're no longer able to do that, but that's the one that stands out in my mind.
Okay. Well, what other interesting items have you come across?
Is there anything you guys?
We've had one patron asked for 3 different sizes of cake pans. She used those to make a cousin's wedding gift, her wedding cake.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
And regretted it later because it took over 20 pounds of confectioner's sugar and was real expensive to make.
Oh, wow.
And we haven't gotten any, but I think you can request American Girl dolls also.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's fascinating.
And Kari recently found a list of like all kinds of amazing things that apparently there are options out there to borrow. There were like Santa suits, and one library you can check out people. Yeah, so I think it's like an expert on something, and so you go to the library, but they said you can check out people.
Yeah. The library's not into human trafficking.
No,
Make sure
I think it was like nurses. And,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, so you could go in and
Expertise.
be like, yes, expertise.
Okay. Wow, that's fascinating. So I saw on the website there are all kinds of things that are listed, like, of course, books, visual materials, computer files, internet resources, serial publications, sound recordings, archival materials, articles, music scores, and maps. So do you get a lot of requests for non-book type items?
Not tons and tons of requests
Is
for
it usually
non-book
books?
items. And as Sarah said, we can get some items that are actual items other than books. But no, it's usually books, DVDs, CDs, microfilm.
Audiobooks.
LPs.
Yeah. LPs.
A lot of LPs.
Yeah.
Are the majority books, would you say?
Lots of DVDs.
DVDs more so than
It
books?
might be equal, books and DVDs.
That's interesting. So how often is it that when something's requested, I want this part demystified. Do you all make the decision, or does collections get involved somehow? Or how would it work that somehow our collections department thinks that, well, we should really own that, we should buy that? Does that happen?
Yeah, well, when they get in suggestions for purchase, if they're unable to purchase the item, they'll send it to us to try an ILL.
Okay.
Sometimes if we see something being requested over and over and over,
Right.
we will contact them and say, hey, is there any way that you guys might be able to buy this, since we're just getting so many requests for it.
Yeah, I could see that. It's like, what? How could we possibly not have this? This is the greatest movie ever, or the greatest book.
Yeah. Or if a sequel comes out and we don't have the first whatever DVD, or then we start getting in all those requests, and so then maybe sometimes we'll contact collections and ask, hey, do you want to get the first DVD because the second one is out and everybody wants to watch the first.
And sometimes things have been weeded from the collection, so we don't have them anymore. I know when A Star Is Born came out, we got a request for the previous ones.
Oh, sure. 1970s? Actually,
yeah.
I think there have been 3 versions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That makes sense that people want to see. Well, that happened with me. I saw the movie It out in the theater, and I wanted to see. And we do have the Tim Curry made-for-television version of It from back in the 80s in our collection. But, it'd be a good example. If we didn't, I could get it through ILL.
You could give us a shot. It is important to note, too, that any request that is placed for a current year item goes directly into a queue for the collection development department to look at. And those are the items that our collection development department's choosing from when they're looking at what we're going to buy for the library. And money is generally spent trying to buy newer items for the library. So our job is to, as much as often as we can, to borrow the older items.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's what a great service for the library. I mean, if we're trying to always buy new things and you're wanting that old item, we're probably not buying that, so got to find it somewhere.
Yeah, we can expand the collection in a variety of ways, and ILL is one.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So on a personal level, I'm sure you've worked other jobs. Do you find this work rewarding?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you're library detectives.
Yes. Yeah, I've been doing it maybe almost 15 years now, so Kari's probably longer.
Not too much longer.
Yeah.
Abby's a real expert, and yeah, we do have to investigate quite a number of situations, tracking down books, one way or another, or items. And sometimes we're looking for items that are actually available these days online. Dave was mentioning URLs sometimes are popping up on catalog listings. And so we're often looking online to see if a whole book might be published online. And in this case, it would normally be something pre-1924 publication.
Oh, that's interesting.
And that's a good tip for patrons, because you can often sit at home and find what you're looking for before you even need to come to us these days.
That is really fascinating. I did want to, since I brought up this list of the different types of searches that you could do, I'm curious. Do you get requests for like musical scores and for maps?
Yeah, definitely musical scores, maps. Sometimes
I got an atlas yesterday.
Yeah, more like atlases or something. Yeah.
Well, I think it's just fascinating, all the different things that you can check out through ILL, and it, like you said, it really expands our collection to the entire world, and that's pretty amazing. And I've used it a number of times myself. I think it's whether it's trying to find a DVD of cartoons for my daughter when she was a child that we didn't have in our collection, or like I said, my master's thesis, or just that book that we just don't have in our collection. it's such an amazing service that you all offer. Let me ask you this: what's your favorite part of what you do?
It makes me feel patriotic.
Really?
Yeah, because we're getting information for people, and a lot of times things come in that maybe you don't agree with, but it's awesome to me that we can provide that for people, because you don't have to agree. We're just getting the information, and I love it so much.
Yeah, knowledge is power. Yeah. What about you, Abby? What's your favorite part of the job?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's always been that freedom of information. It's one of my favorite things about libraries. And so ILL really touches on that, because we can get anything. If a library is willing to lend it, we can get it for you. And that's what I love about it. Plus, there's just so many different parts to ILL. You're not just sitting at a desk all day. You're up and down, you're packing books, you're, doing all that. But when it comes down to it, getting these requests for patrons is just so exciting because, being able to research and find them and things like that. And then when we actually get it in, it's like, yay!
Yeah.
So.
And you, Kari?
I think it is the variety of different jobs that we're doing every day, and sometimes it's a great chance to make contact with patrons and help them on the spot. Sometimes we're tracking things down. Sometimes it's as simple as looking at our workflow to see how we can expedite getting items to patrons.
Yeah. Wow. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I'm a lifelong learner. I think most people here at the library are lifelong learners, and, sometimes the collection just isn't enough. You need to get some things from other areas. And I know that, maybe we don't have the biggest collection in every language, and I'm sure that you do a lot of service by helping people find titles in their native tongue. And I think... whether people are just trying to research or read for pleasure or just grow and learn, I think what you do is a really valuable service. And so those of you out there listening, if you've never tried Interlibrary Loan, if nothing else, go to jocolibrary.org. Like I said, go to Using the Library and choose Interlibrary Loan. Browse through the WorldCat catalog. It is fascinating. Oh my gosh, you could spend hours there because you just don't know what is in the collection at another library, and you have the whole world at your fingertips. Did we miss a question you wish we would have asked? Do you have thoughts or stories about today's topic? Share them with us on Facebook. Facebook.com/JocoLibrary.
You got your time, and I got mine too. Oh, I'll never be lonely as long as I've got you.
And now, our writer's quote of the day.
Hi, this is Dave Carson. You know that I host the Did You Hear podcast, but that's just one of my many responsibilities as a web content developer here at the Johnson County Library. One of my favorite lines from a movie comes from the character Emily in the short animated film World of Tomorrow, written by Don Hertzfeld. Do not lose time on daily trivialities. Do not dwell on petty detail. For all of these things melt away and drift apart within the obscure traffic of time. Live well and live broadly. You are alive and living now. Now is the envy of all of the dead. We leave you with sounds from one of our locations. It's your audio minute we call Library Zen.
For more episodes of Did You Hear, go to the Johnson County Library website, jocolibrary.org/didyouhear.